Okay, so I want to start off with the notion that that audio gets no respect. If you look around in a studio, you have cameras, you have lights, and there are microphones, but they're little bitty things, and not very evident by design, and in a shoot outside of the studio, and we're going to be emphasizing outside of studio shooting in this class. You may have reflectors and diffusers and all kinds of things on the visual side of things, and you have little itty bitty mics, and that's about it for the audio side. But even though audio gets no respect, I maintain, and I'm kind of an audio guy. When I was in the business, I worked mainly on the audio side of it. And I maintain that audio is more important than video. After all, we don't have anything like radio on the video side. So we have an all audio, and we have all kinds of audio opportunities, but we don't have video without audio. We had silent movies years ago, so it goes back to that. But what did they have to do? They had to put the dialogue in type on the screen, because you have to have the dialogue. And in the theaters, they had these wonderful old Wurlitzer pipe organs to give that emotional background that you need with the music. And so you had the equivalent, in a sense, of an audio track between those two. So even though audio does not get the respect or the dollars that video does, I maintain it's more important. So if you screw up, and typically in a major shoot, you have all this apparatus for the picture. And if there's going to be a problem, something like maybe 90% of the time it's in the audio. So not only is it does it not get any respect, it is likely to be more troublesome. So much of the problem in a shoot comes down to bad audio, and there are things you can do about that. But so we're going to emphasize how to get really good audio, and I'm going to do two things today. First of all, three things. The first is to hand you this. I hope you will read it. I made this several years ago, as you can see from the copyright date, and the graphics in here, by the way, I stole, but the words are mine. And I think they're, 7 pages or something like that. This will give you a pretty good overview of the field of audio, the terminology, and that sort of thing. And we're going to do that also on the screen today. So today will be kind of an overview. Then the next time we'll get to, I guess I have to wake up my computer here. Come on. There we go. Here's a course agenda. So we're going to emphasize kind of an overview and audio recording goals today. Next week, we're going to be talking about microphones and how do you support microphones and the types of microphones and et cetera, et cetera. The third week, we're going to be talking about digital recording and standards and all that sort of thing. We'll get into other stuff too. And the fourth week, we're going to talk about the roles for the audio team, what people do and how you relate to the other roles. So that's kind of where we're going to go in the course. Audio goals. The number one goal of audio, you can see that all right, yeah, is that the dialogue must be understandable. It doesn't necessarily have to have to be natural sounding. In fact, if you listen to a lot of film dialogue and just listen to the audio quality of it, you can see that they're not trying to make it sound like that person was really sitting in a restaurant talking and sounding really natural with all the restaurant sounds, etc. They're sacrificing a whole lot for the number one goal. You have to be able to understand it. The audience will forgive you almost everything, audio quality problems, but if they can't understand it, they won't forgive it. So we'll sacrifice a whole lot of other things if we have to make it understandable. And so we're going to really focus on that. What's that mean? Well, it means it's clear, it's not buried in noise, and there are two kinds of noise. We'll be talking more about this. Acoustic noise, that is noise that's picked up through the microphone, and then electronic noise, noise that's generated in the recording equipment or in the microphone or the audio chain. We try to minimize that down to where you can't tell it's there. There's always some noise, but we try to minimize that. In the acoustic noise, we try to minimize that too. Even if we're in a noisy situation where the background noise adds to the ambience that you want, we're still going to try to keep it fairly low so that the voice stands above it clearly. So noise is our enemy. What is noise? Noise is any sound you don't want.
When it's too much noise, are you wearing two mics that would that help you be louder? Or are you using that
No, these are both going into recording devices. So we're basically testing out two systems. So I have a recording device in this pocket here that this mic is connected to, and this one is a radio mic going to I don't know where, but it's going somewhere. So yeah, we'll talk more about that later on. Okay. Audio goal, appropriate reverb or echo. Usually you want some, and we'll talk about that, and a little bit about acoustics and how you control that. And not distorted, which usually comes from recording things too loudly. So we'll talk about that, especially when we get into digital recording. So some more audio goals. Okay, this next one, number 2 main category here, it synchronizes with the picture. Now, back in the day of film and that sort of thing, this was a big issue. In the day of digital equipment, not nearly as much of an issue, but there are some issues we have to deal with. We will cover these. There are some gotchas, some ways that you can screw it up so that the picture and the audio will not stay in sync together. And so we'll cover that. The audio should complement the mood of the scene, and it should have the correct sound perspective. And by that I mean if the person is looking at the camera and talking, it should sound like the sound is coming from that direction. But if the person turns his head and looks another direction, the sound should not should reveal that difference. Well, we're not getting that right now because the sound is coming in through this microphone here, which goes with me. So we're losing sound perspective by having the mic clipped on me, okay? So in a film situation, generally we want the mic to be somewhere between the speaker and the camera so that as the person moves around, the sound correspondingly changes. If I talk in another direction, it changes the sound of my voice a little bit. And we want to capture that in our presentation. Of course, number 5, eliminate wind noise and popping. Number 6, generally when we're doing a dramatic film, we have to hide the mics. So right now, we're not doing a dramatic film, so we have the mics in evidence, which means that they're out in the air, which gives a better pickup. I could put the mics under my sweater, but that would muffle them a little bit, and we can probably compensate for that and make it work. But we will, one of the things we'll cover in this class is when the mic can't be seen in a dramatic movie, how do you hide it? And we'll talk about a lot of ways of hiding the mic. Hiding it on your head, behind your ear, under your clothing, not usually the best choice, or on a stand like this, the mic overhead, just out of the shot. So there's a lot of ways of hiding the mic when we need to do that. And in recording the audio, one of the goals that we need to have is to inconvenience the talent as little as possible. Now, talent is in quotes here because in the film industry, we don't assume that the crew has any talent at all. So when we refer to talent, we're talking about people who are in front of the camera, not the people behind the camera. They may be more talented, even more highly paid than the people in front of the camera, but the nomenclature is talent is the guy in front of the camera. So right now I'm talent because I'm being filmed. Okay, so it's important in a dramatic situation, especially that we place as little burden as possible on the talent. So we want to get the mic, if we're using a wireless mic on him or her, we want to get it on with the minimum amount of interruption and that sort of thing, because an actor is trying to remember his or her lines, trying to stay in character. And it's very hard in a film situation because you may be repeating the same line 4 or 5 times, and then you may jump to a whole different scene or that sort of thing. The story may have developed, and what was starting out as a loving relationship between 2 people may have turned to hostility, and that has to show. And the actor may have to go in 1 minute from a loving relationship to a hostile relationship and show that emotion. And the actor can't get into character and show the emotion if he or she is being interrupted a lot. And so we need to keep our mouths shut, and we need to make sure that the sound is working properly, but do it with as little contact with and little interruption of the talent as possible, so that they can function well. All right, moving on. Audio recording process goals. You will be part of a team, which may be 3 people, might be 20 or 30 people on big shoots. And on a big shoot, the team gets to be a big problem in a sense, coordinating all these people. And one thing that happens with people who are not experienced in shooting dramatic films is team members start talking to each other. And it starts out with a light buzz, and it gets louder and louder and louder, and pretty soon, the actors and everybody is distracted by the buzz. So as part of the team, you have to figure out how to minimize your distraction. Yeah, please, for you. And be disciplined about not talking if you don't really need to, and if you have to talk to another staff member, move away from the set, keep your voices low, etc. Okay. So keeping mics out of the camera shot is a major issue, and we'll talk more about how to do that. Keep mic shadows from falling on the subject. Oh yes, famous one. Boom shadow, boom shadow. And something we don't think about a whole lot, but need to, and that is where we're using wires, as I am here. I have this wire taped down so that it lies flat on the floor. Now, if I were in a high traffic area, I would tape the whole length of the wire, because if you step on the wire, it can roll, and it can take you for a ride. When we're using wires, it has to be a major consideration that you run the wire in a traffic area as little as possible, and you tape it down where it has to cross a traffic area. As I said before, minimize conversation. So during a take, it goes like this. The director will say something like "roll camera," and at this point, if you're operating, audio may be recorded on the video camera, or it may be recorded on a digital audio recorder. Where is that? It's on the table in the back. Oh, okay. We'll take a look at it. After a while, we have a little digital audio recorder that's recording what we're doing here with a wireless mic. And we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Number 2, don't forget to press the record button now. You may think that doesn't need to be said. Yes, it does, because all of us who have been in this business have gotten into a program to a certain degree and said, I forgot to start the recorder. So, yeah. So number 3, confirm that you're recording after the camera confirms the recording by saying something like sound recording or just sound. You need to listen on the phones continuously because you can have a situation like I was recording a psychologist in a workshop not long ago, and he was wearing a wireless mic, and he had taken the mic unit out of his pocket and set it on the chair beside him, and then it fell off onto the floor and disconnected him. But he didn't know he was disconnected. Fortunately, I was wearing headphones and was able to tell him, you're disconnected. This was during a live show. So
I just want to pipe up and say that's the most important thing. Notice.
Yeah.
And always monitor the sound.
Yeah.
Especially if you have RF or radio microphones, because there's so much interference that you can get.
Yeah. So yeah.
Always monitor your sound, especially with RF.
Okay. Number 5 there, don't do anything that would distract the talent, like talk. But be aware of this, that we're all hardwired in a way that if there's movement close to us, we can't not look if we see it in the peripheral vision, because that's part of the way our brain is wired to protect us. So if somebody's moving near us, we look. And if that person happens to be being filmed at that moment or recorded at that moment, and they look off to the side because somebody distracted them, they've ruined the take. Okay, so basically during a take, the sound operator will not move unless the talent is moved or something, and you have to keep the mic where it needs to be. But try not to move during a take, because the person, if the actor catches you in his peripheral vision, he will look. He can't not look. Okay, no matter how hard he tries not to. So that becomes important. Number 6, don't stop recording until the director says cut or similar. how many times have we witnessed this happening, that we cut one of the cameras or the audio recording, and the director wants to continue, but we can't because we now have to reslate it and restart it. So risk recording a little unnecessary stuff to keep the recorder running until you know the director says cut. And end of the take, don't comment on the quality of the performance. Now, it's very tempting because a sound person, you may be close to the actor, and you may want to say to the actor, that was really good, you know, or something like that. But you are not the director, and the director may hate it or love it or whatever, and so don't put yourself in the place of the director by, I mean, we want to support each other. We want to, you know, the actor, performer, is feeling all alone there probably, and so it feels really good if somebody gives you some positive feedback. Well, that's the director's job. But if you, the sound person, say that was amazing, that was really good, and the director says, you know, that stunk. That's not what we need at all. That's, you know, that would be good if our goal was this, but you're supposed to be angry with this person, and I'm not seeing the anger, you know. So it's not your job to comment on the quality of the performance. Now, if there's an audio problem, that is your job. And so you can say, you know, somebody bumped the mic partway through. I'm not sure that take is good. Who do you say that to? The director, of course. So then it's up to the director, who should be listening on phones too, by the way, but up to the director as to whether or not he wants to live with it or redo it.
I was just thinking, you really hate to interrupt, but if you hear that something's wrong, you hear a buzz suddenly, you have to stop things, don't you? What do you do then?
Well,
It's going to ruin the
it's
tape.
a good question, and she was Lucy was our director in the program we just did. So this is a call of the director, and if there's a sound problem, the director needs to be aware of it. Hopefully the director will be seeing the picture and hearing the sound and will be aware of the sound problem. But in that case, the sound person shouldn't stop, shouldn't call a cut, unless the director tells him or her, if you become aware of a sound problem, go ahead and call
So you
cut.
let the tape finish, and then, as you mentioned in point 7, say, I heard a buzz throughout this or something.
Yeah, because it's up to the director to make the decision as to whether or not you can live with the problem. Somebody kicks a mic stand or some other problem. Well, maybe that was an amazing take, and you're not likely to get a better one, and you'll find a way. You can maybe replace some of the dialogue if you need to.
So it's not your call to do
So
that, right?
yeah, it's not your call. That's the point. So the director can deputize other people. You know, if you see a problem, call cut. But yeah. Okay. Moving on. So before the recording, if using a new to you equipment, practice with it prior. Oh boy. I've got caught on this one a few times. Didn't really know how to use the equipment. A situation comes up, and so we got caught yesterday. I made a mistake in how it was set up, and we got the program finally. But so know your equipment thoroughly. Make sure it's set up correctly. Test it. Number 2, make sure batteries are fresh or new or fully charged. Okay, here's the deal. A lot of things these days run on AA batteries, which cost in bulk about 35 cents a piece. So you use the battery an hour yesterday, you know the battery is good for 3 or 4 hours use, we'll say, so you're tempted to start the day with that used battery. I say throw the battery away legally and start with fresh batteries. At any time you have the slightest doubt about a battery, spend 35 cents and buy a new battery, because if the battery goes down, then what happens? It probably doesn't just stop. It's probably the low voltage is going to cause the sound to be distorted or weak or something like that. And you may not notice it at first. And so you may have a situation where you have a half hour of recording, which all is somewhat distorted, but in the field in your headphones you didn't hear it, and so not usable or difficult to use it. So just change batteries a lot if you need to. Spend usually 2 or 4 of them, so spend the 35 cents times 2 or 4 and go with new batteries. It's the cheapest thing, the cheapest part of the whole process. You're using $1,000 camera and the picture is ruined because of lack of 2 35-cent batteries. It's crazy. Okay. Number 3, make sure you have the correct cards and that they are initialized in the recorder and that they are not locked. Oh, we've got a place for you over here. Why initialized in the recorder or in the camera or whatever? Some cameras, et cetera, will not operate if the card was not initialized in that unit. So the safest thing to do is to always initialize the card in the unit you're using.
Now, when you say card, what are you talking about?
Oh, about SD cards,
That's simple.
generally, or many SDs or.
Or the recording goes?
Yeah, usually that's what we're recording to these days, SD cards. Yeah. Actually, I'll give you a handout, not today, but there's a handout taped to the cabinet over there. I'll give you a copy of that, all about SD cards, because they're a fact of life. Yeah, Jim.
I just had a general question on that number 3. Isn't that the cameraman's job? Camera operator.
Well, it depends. If you're recording on the camera, then that becomes the camera operator. But if you're recording on a separate digital audio recorder, as we are today, then it's a sound person's responsibility. Good question, Jim. Thanks. Okay. Number 4, so important. How many times, if you've been doing this kind of thing for very long, if you've been out at some location and ready to shoot, and there is some little thing like a connector, a wire, maybe a card or something that you forgot to bring, and so you have to send somebody back home or back somewhere to get it. The thing is delayed for an hour. Excuse me. So, better to start with a checklist and just go through and check it off and make sure you have all the little bits and pieces. Because it's a lot of little things, like very easy. You see these mics are clipped on. Easy to get on the scene and not have a mic clip. And then you can still fasten the mic there, but it's more difficult without a clip. I mean, there are a gazillion little things that you might need. And so make a checklist and just go down and check it to make sure you have everything you need. Number 6, set up and test your equipment prior to the recording session. Number number 5. Number 6, check the recorder to make sure all the settings are correct. The modern cameras have, such extensive menus of choices that you can make, and there can be a setting on the camera or a setting on your digital audio recorder that's, no. Sorry. There can be one of 100 different settings can be off and mess up your recording. So test it, play it back, make sure it's working. After the recording, remove the card and lock it so you don't inadvertently record over it again. There's a little slide on the side of the SD card. If you push that down, it prevents the card from being erased or recorded over. So if you lock it out, then you don't accidentally put the card back in and erase it. Yeah.
I was just curious, do you ever actually mark something on the card so you know it's yours?
Well, yeah, I recommend on all of your cards, write your name or your initial or something on it, and it's a good idea to put a number or something that tells you which card it is, because if you have, brand new cards with nothing on them and you've recorded on one of 6, you may have to put them each in turn in the recorder to find out which. It doesn't change the look of it if it has something recorded on it. So yeah, I would identify the cards.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you do one card per shoot, and even though there may be more room on it?
Yeah.
You just carry new cards with you, so each film gets a new card?
Yeah, well, each project, yeah. And then once you have transferred that, and have maybe 2 backup copies of it, then you can reinitialize the card and start over again. You can use the cards, I don't know how many times, hundreds of times, but it's important as quickly as you can to make a copy of the card. The worst danger of a card is losing it, because it's this big, and they're just super easy to lose. So if you shoot all day onto one card and then lose the card, you've lost the day. So copy it right away.
Does initializing erase everything that was there?
Yes.
Yeah,
So you don't initialize if you don't check it out first and see if there's anything else on the card?
Right. Yeah. Before you initialize a card, make sure that it's that what you have on the card you don't mind erasing. Yeah, Jim.
Is cards generally the responsibility of the sound person? I mean, does he get his own cards?
The producer of the show would assign the sound person some cards.
And these are expect to be blank cards that you could just record on?
Well, you'd initialize them. They might have stuff previously recorded on it, but since you're going to initialize it, that doesn't matter,
Okay.
because that will make it like a new card. Yeah.
One thing too, that I've encountered is it's best to even have a backup card in your pocket, because I've had cards corrupt on a shoot where just something comes up and it's like, oh my God, it froze up.
Yeah.
And, the talent or whatever's going on, the event's not gonna wait, so you have to swap it right out. And a lot of times the newer cameras actually have dual slots, so you're backing it up as you're recording.
Some will record two cards simultaneously, or one after the other, but usually simultaneously is what you need. Yeah. The cards are very reliable, very tough, and I have never had one fail, but it's possible. They could fail. Yeah. Okay. Secure your equipment. After the shoot, if you're in a public place or whatever, your task immediately is to, pick up your cords and corral your equipment. For one thing, sometimes people steal things. So if you have a lot of unguarded equipment, you could lose it. But the other thing is that you're kind of a public nuisance if you have cords around. So capture everything and get it in one place, and then maybe even get it to your car or whatever. And then at some point before you're done with it, then correctly coil the cords and put them away. You don't necessarily have time on location to package everything exactly the right way. Sometimes you just have to get out of there. What often happens is that you're granted, from until, we'll say, 2 o'clock to get the shoot done, and you've had some problems, and so it's 2:10 already, and people are standing around wanting you to be gone, and that's not a time to start coiling your cords correctly, et cetera. Package it up. I mean, just collect it, but before you put it away, make sure that everything is packaged correctly and that you have all the pieces. The easiest thing in the world is to leave some piece of equipment, especially some small piece of equipment, on the location. So look carefully. I think I always go back and look again to make sure I haven't left anything. Okay. Relationship with the talent. Okay. Actors are typically very focused on staying in character, remembering their lines, etc. Therefore, don't engage them in casual conversation unless they initiate it. So don't be the one that starts the conversation with an actor. Okay. And then don't give your opinion about the quality of performance unless asked by the director. The director might say, well, what do you think? And then you're empowered to give your opinion to the director, not to the talent. And briefly. But if there's an audio problem, tell the director, not the actor. And placing the mic, if you're a man, ask a woman staff person, not necessarily a sound person, but if you have a woman on the production team, ask the woman to place mics on women, especially if it's in the chest area or whatever. In any case, place the mic quickly and with minimal distraction. So some women don't mind at all, and other women get very nervous if a man is too close to them. So. Okay. I like this little quote by Walt Disney. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Okay, with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. The bathroom. Glad you're here. Okay, this is a kind of an introduction to sound. Because even though we often think of sound as in its electronic form, it starts off as an acoustic thing, sound waves in the room, and that knowing a little bit about how sound itself works as disturbances in air pressure is helpful to us in understanding microphone placement and things like that. So what is sound? Sound is small disturbances in the air pressure. We live in a pressurized world with, if this bottle were full of nothing, or a vacuum, there would be 14 pounds of pressure on each square inch of the bottle, and it would collapse the bottle. Of course, the bottle wouldn't be able to stand it, but we're pressurized from the inside as well as the outside, so we live in this pressurized air. But if we disturb the pressure of the air a little bit by compressing a little of it between our hands, or blowing through it and then modulating that wind as it comes out, then this goes out in a spherical pattern in every direction. These little disturbances in the airwaves, and you can see this represented on the chart here two different ways. These are supposed to be little molecules, I guess, or atoms of air, and they can be closer together, more compressed, and less close together, rarefied. And then we have a graphic here that shows the pressure difference here. So we have a band of pressure moving out, and then in between the bands of pressure we have places where there's a slight vacuum, a partial vacuum. And this moves out at the speed of sound, which is roughly 1,000 feet per second, in a spherical pattern. So it's growing in every direction. So a water wave is just on the surface of it, but we see these waves move out, so we're familiar with that. But sound waves move spherically, and that's like a balloon blowing up, moving out in every direction. So if sound encounters a hard surface, like the walls over here, it bounces off and is not diminished at all in the process. If it's a surface that is hard enough that it can't be moved, when the sound wave hits it, it compresses and moves back. And so if we have a room that's where all the surfaces are hard, then the sound wave continues for a long time, bouncing around in different ways. And so if you clap your hands there, you can hear it again and again. If it's big enough, you hear it as an echo, but if it's small enough, you just hear it as a continuation of the original sound. And if it's less than a tenth of a second, we call it reverb. If the echoes, the reflections come in less than a tenth of a second, we hear it as a continuation of the original sound. We don't hear it as a separate sound. But if it's more than about a tenth of a second, we hear it as a separate sound. So we hear the original sound, and then we hear the echo. So a tenth of a second is about 100-foot travel. So a wall 50 feet away, where the wave would hit it and then come back, we'll just begin to hear an echo against a wall 50 feet away with 100 foot of travel in it. Okay, any questions as we're going along here? Yeah.
So, like listening to things, YouTube videos, whatever, that kind of weird background sound is reverberation. It's not really echo. It's the sound just kind of reverberating.
Right. Yeah, the echo and reverb are the same thing, except that echo is just delayed more. So it's a reflection off of a surface that comes back. And then reverb, we hear it as a continuation of the original sound, and generally, if you were to graph that, it diminishes slowly over time. And well, let me move to the next graphic here. So if it from the original sound until it diminishes by 60 decibels, which means for all practical purposes we can't hear it anymore, that time is called the reverb time. And in a small room with hard walls and not much to absorb sound in it will be very reverberant, or a concert hall with hard walls in a large room, you may have a reverb time of 3 or 4 seconds before it diminishes that much. The orchestra stops playing, and you can hear it continue to reverb for a while. There would be an echo there too, but because the first sounds get back to your ear in less than 1/10 of a second, you don't hear it as an echo, you hear it as continuing reverb. Okay, so when sound hits a soft and deep object, some of it is absorbed, so the graphic here, the little red arrow of incoming sound hits something that's both deep and soft, like a couch or a bed or a thick curtain or something like that. The sound will try to move the things in there and will be converted into heat, actually, a little tiny bit of heat. It'll be absorbed. But some of it may go through, so we have a wall covering. So some of the sound may go through and then come back and reflect against the wall and then come back and have more of it removed. If this is not very thick, more of the sound will be reflected. But if it's thick and dense, almost 100% of the sound will be recorded, will be absorbed. And then some of the sound may go through the wall, so that's shown there too. So some may be reflected, some may be absorbed, some may be transmitted through the barrier. We have a problem in our control room. There's a card room opposite the control room. The control room is that way and the card room is that way. They get pretty excited in the card room and they make a lot of sound. And even though the sound barrier in there is fairly good, we can hear them. So we need a better barrier, except that we don't usually have mics in there, so it's not critical. But when we can hear them in here, as we sometimes can, we could pick them up in the mics and as background sound. So fortunately, they're not there all the time, but we.
That's the solution, just tell them not to play when we're recording.
That's right, yeah. You tell them. Okay. Okay, noise is unwanted sound. And as we mentioned before, there's two kinds of noise: acoustic noise, noise in the room, is picked up by the microphone along with the recorded, the wanted sound. So there's almost always some noise in any situation. This is a pretty quiet room. If we turn on the air conditioning, we can hear that. And if we're really quiet and turn the mic up a lot, you can hear a little bit of residual noise in the room, the acoustic noise, although it's pretty quiet. So sources of acoustic noise: people talking nearby, most common thing, traffic, air conditioners, lawnmowers, and dogs barking. And anybody who's been involved in making movies in a natural situation has had problems with this, and I have had to pay people not to mow their lawns, and because one lawnmower, if you're trying to shoot outside on a street or something like that, you can hear them a city block away at least. So.
Do we get a lot of street traffic noise?
We don't get a lot here in the studio, but if you wanted to shoot something right out here, the traffic noise is pretty intense.
Okay.
This room, for not having been designed as a studio, is relatively quiet. The traffic noise are right out there, and if you go out there, it's pretty loud. But that was a pretty good wall, somehow.
We can turn off the AC too.
It is off right now, yeah.
Move
Yeah.
off quite a lot.
Yeah, which we a lot of times have to do when we're shooting in here. Dogs barking. So too much reverb can become noise. So any sound you don't want is noise. And then electronic noise is added by the equipment, poor quality microphones, we'll get into that later, so I'm going to kind of skip over this now. But one of the things that makes a difference in the price of a microphone is the quality of the amplifiers in it. And you can now get pretty good cheap microphones, but not all cheap microphones are good. So it can add some shh type sound, hiss, they call it, and very difficult to get rid of it. Okay. Now here's a typical problem. The mic is too far away. We have a performer here with a mic on, but the videographer is over on the far corner there, using the mic on the camera, and we're not going to probably get good sound hardly ever with the mic on the camera. It's a very convenient place to have a mic because no wires are required, et cetera, but it's not the right location to get the sound. So the best answer to that problem is to move the mic closer, yes. Which generally means you have to have a separate mic, separate from the camera, and run a wire or wireless situation between the mic and the camera. So we have a clip-on mic, we have a mic on a stand, we have a mic on a handheld mic boom. We'll be talking about all of these things here. And the mic boom is generally the preferred way. Almost any movie you've ever seen has been shot with the mic on a boom like that. Handhelds these days almost always. Yeah, we have a mic boom here, so with a shotgun mic on it. So.
It seems odd to me that, I mean, obviously the person holding the boom has to be good because, you know, the chance of getting that in the shot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Do you go to mic boom holding school?
Well, I'll tell you the secret for you. Okay. When you're holding the boom, a lot of times like this, if the people are standing up, fortunately the takes are generally not very long in a film situation, so you sorry, but you sight, you get the mic where you want it, and then you find the bottom of the mic and some object on the wall or whatever that tells you, because you find out where the picture starts from the cinematographer. Are you seeing the mic? Tell me when you see the mic, you know. And then you bring it up, and then you have a reference in the background, and you keep the mic above that visual reference. So it's really not that hard, but it gets very tiresome after a while. So if it's going to be a long shot or involved, then you're probably going to want to have something like this.
Do you generally have one mic boom per actor or per talent?
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah. It depends how close together they are and how quickly you can move from one to another. You notice a lot of times the two actors will be, you know, this close together, and one boom can swivel back and forth between the two. But if they're a little farther apart than that, then you'll have a boom for each.
Yeah. You have to know the dialogue also, if you're going to be going back and forth.
Yeah.
So you have to know the script sometimes.
Yeah.
So much.
And also blocking, that's the other part of it.
Okay. The second best answer, and notice the order because it's important. The first best answer is to get the mic closer. That's the best way to improve the quality of the sound. Get the mic closer. Sometimes that's not possible, so the next best answer is to use a directional mic. Now, you can do both. You can get the mic closer and use a directional mic, and we usually do. What do we mean by directional? Well, there are generally two categories that we talk about. The first one is an omni, meaning all direction, and you can see that this pattern of the mic there is almost a circle. It's a little bit more sensitive on one side than the other, but hardly any, not enough to be noticeable. So the mics that I'm wearing here are omnidirectional mics. It doesn't matter which way they're turned. They pick up the sound regardless. If they're turned totally away from the mouth, it doesn't matter. You can't tell the difference, okay? Their pattern is spherical. And for something like this, that's probably what you want, because it's easy for these to get turned sideways or whatever. So these will pick up from any direction. And certain other things like interviews are best with an omni mic, and you don't have to point it exactly at the mouth. You just have to get it somewhere in the vicinity. And then the other main category is uni, meaning one directional mics, and there are a variety of kinds of this. This is a very common pattern here, and this is usually called cardioid because it looks roughly like a heart-shaped, so cardioid, heart-shaped is what that means. Pattern, so it's pretty broadly sensitive in front and fairly dead in the back. So this is a very common kind of mic. Most mics that you would pick up, if they're directional at all, they're going to have this kind of pattern. But that mic over there, that short shotgun mic, has a pattern more like this. And notice a couple of things about it. It's very insensitive in these areas, kind of. Are you seeing my mouse?
Show on the screen.
What's that?
Your mouse?
Oh, mouse isn't coming.
While you're doing it.
It's not coming through. Okay. Notice that this direction and that direction, it's very sensitive in the one direction, and unfortunately a little bit sensitive in the exact opposite direction. So it's and it's slightly sensitive off to the sides, but with a mic like this, it will reduce. You know, if there's noise coming from all around it, it'll reduce the noise quite a bit. And we'll talk about how you use one of these, because there's a lot of gotchas in using one of these things. One of them is if you had this mic pointing at you, and I was standing. Give the cameraman a little workout here. Standing so that the mic is pointed like this, okay, and we'll say this is high enough not to be in the picture. What's wrong with this picture? Okay, the mic is pointed at me, but it's also pointed at the wall. And so all the sound from the front is going to hit the wall and come right into the microphone. So we have just defeated the directional characteristic of the microphone by pointing it at a wall, which is a reflector. Think of a close wall as being like an audio mirror. So any noise that's happening out there is going to hit the wall and come right in, hardly diminished at all. So it's a little trickier than it might seem at first to use one of these, because you have to think about what's beyond the thing. I had a situation once where my watch, I have to trick it to tell the time. I have to shake it a little bit or something. I was doing some shooting outside, and there was a waterfall about a block away. And I was shooting along a river, and just a small waterfall about a block away. You could just barely hear it. And some of the lines, we had the mic pointed toward the actor, but the waterfall was straight that way. and we got the waterfall in the mic, and then the other actor was pointing another direction, and we didn't get the waterfall, and we couldn't cut the two together because the waterfall was too prominent in this one, and if it had been in all of them equally, then we probably could have used it, but it was, but you know, the waterfall was not very loud, but it was straight ahead on the directional, the shotgun mic, and we were picking it up way too well. Yeah.
So I know that in editing, there's ways to eliminate sound, right? Because, I mean, hiss and whatever. So has it gotten sophisticated enough to fix something like that?
Somewhat. Yeah. You can get rid of some sound at the cost of somewhat damaging the sound you want usually, but yeah, some of the software is pretty good at eliminating noise. But of course, the more noise, the harder it is to eliminate. And the more the noise is spread across the audio spectrum, the harder it is to eliminate. If you have deep bass noise, that's very easy to eliminate.
The guy playing the music, boom, boom, next door, that's a little easier.
Yeah. All right. So, distance still matters most. This says, mounting a shotgun mic on the camera does not work nearly as well as a lavalier clip-on up close. Okay. Now, mounting a shotgun mic on the camera works a lot better than the built-in mics on the camera, but it is the best. There's no substitute for getting closer. I mean, if we're talking about 3 or 4 feet in front of a shotgun mic, that works really well. But if we're talking about 30 feet or 20 feet or 10 feet in front of a shotgun mic in any natural situation where there's some noise, it's not going to work very well. So there's basically no perfect substitute for getting the mic closer. Yeah, go ahead.
Why do singers use a mic instead of waffles?
Well, it's part of their act, or part of. I mean, they would want to have a pretend mic if they didn't have a real one, probably. But they often get much closer, and they get the mic sometimes almost up against their lips. We'll talk about the problem with that coming up when you're too close to the mic. But they like to get really close, and typically a singer on a stage is going to have at his or her feet a large speaker, floor monitor, because she can't. They'll say a singer is a woman standing in front of a band, and the drummer and the guitar amps and all that. She literally cannot even tell if she's singing. She can't hear herself sing. She could sing at the top of her lungs and not know if she's making any sound because the band is so loud right there. And so she has to have a speaker at her feet pointed right at her, or sometimes they put little phones in their ears so they can hear themselves, because they can't hear themselves, they can't tell if they're singing on key or not. So because she has a speaker at her feet, if she pointed the mic toward that, it would feed back big time. So she has to be really close to the mic to be loud enough into the mic so that her voice is coming in louder than the speaker below, so that it doesn't feed back. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, isn't it when you have that speaker like that, a big speaker at your feet, the squawking because of the two mics being next to each other, or the receiver and the mic is.
Well, it's not the mics, but it's. I mean,
It's the. What is it? I mean, you gotta get it away.
it's the mic to the speaker. If she points the mic at the speaker, which she might just inadvertently do, it'll feed back loud. So she learns not to do that. But she's got to be close to the mic.
Yeah, I thought even that 5 feet would
Oh, yeah.
speak back.
Oh, it will. Oh,
From
absolutely.
the per foot to this isn't gonna work.
It depends on how close she is and whether it's pointed at
So,
the speaker.
Why not just use lovely?
well, because this is too much distance. She's got to be like an inch or less. It's got to be very close.
Because of the loud noise behind.
Because of the monitor at her feet typically, and the band, of course, et cetera. So the band is deafening her, because she's standing right in front of it.
But if she has the earphones,
Yeah.
then she could use the lavalier.
Yeah, and then they give her, yeah, well, yes, if she doesn't have a floor monitor. And you know,
Singing for the national anthem somewhere
Yeah.
out in the field maybe,
Yeah.
or whatever.
in my church, you know, which a lot of guitars and drums and that sort of thing, they all have wireless monitors in their ears, and so that could work. But very often on a stage they have speakers on the floor so they can hear themselves. But they have to hear themselves. If they can't, they can't sing on key. And we've had some experience. We've had some groups. I'm happen to be president of the California Club, and we have entertainers there, and we've had situations where a singer could not hear herself and could not sing on key, and the audience does not like that. So,
Wasn't her fault.
yeah. All right. Time. Well, we're a minute over time, so we'll pick this up next time. Some rookie mistakes. Shotgun mic mistakes. That was one. Don't forget what's behind the mic. Hard surfaces like sound. Okay, we already talked about that. All right. Thank you for coming. So, good group. Thank you. So, thank you all.
There you go.
What's on the deck for next week?
What's on for next week?
Yeah.
Microphones.
Mike,
Yeah, and we'll be talking about not only the mics, but how you connect the mic into the system, and so yeah. Yeah, we'll